Hey guys, Darren Kelly, Coach of Boys and Pods, and welcome back to another trade mode heading into round 8. Can you believe it? The season is flying by at the moment, already round 8. But we have another 2 trades heading into this week, so use them or lose them. But this week is shaping up to be a pretty important week for trades, as a lot of people are sort of scrambling with what they want to do this week, with a few things thrown at us. I'll touch on the Chera news already, that he was suspended for 1 week with his, striking, that as they classed it as. Luckily, that has now been overturned and it was just turned into a fine, so he is free to play. So that has shaken up a few things with trades. I think we also knew he was going to get off. It was pretty soft to begin with. Um, a few injuries have occurred in the last previous games. A lot of things are moving here and there. So trades are starting to shape up and start to be quite important. But let's dive into all the options that we need to talk about today. I'll start with the trade out targets. So let's do it. So a lot of people are trading out Sam Davidson as a number 1 trade out target so far this week, and I think that's perfect. It is really this time of the year to be trading out these maxed out rookies, if you have no other issues in your side. So break even to 65, 626k on his head. He opened up a huge amount of cash for you and to put on someone else, or even upgrade him to a premium from that. So he has a great option to move off of him. I moved off him last week, so yeah, definitely time to do that now. Hugo Garcia, I think he's a massive priority to go. Anyone that is prone to being subbed out, and this particularly the way that they did it with him, is huge red flags that you do not want this in your side. He's clearly out of favour with Ross Lyon at the moment. So that 592k can definitely be put to better use. His break-even has shot up after that 20 last week, and you definitely don't want him on field. So he is a priority to jump off, and he does have plenty of money on his head, so he can go as an elevated rookie. Sam Lawler, a very good chance to jump off as well. Again, maxed out price-wise, 550k on his head. Went up to 11k on the weekend. Up against Hawthorn, tough matchup, so he is a very good chance to jump off. And I'll bring out my trade out targets here, my top 5, and I'll just quickly run through. I've named Tom Stewart as the number 1 target to trade out, and it's probably a bit weird because he's the only one actually named as a special person, but I just think he's by far the easiest trade out if you own him. I know he's not super highly owned, but I think I just want to make it clear that if you own him, it is time to go. He is averaging 63 in your side. He's missed 2 games so far this year, plus the 9, plus the 60, plus the 44. Now he's potentially out for an extended period of time. He just needs to go. It's been a shame because he looked quite good in that first game, and the potential for him to be a really good scorer for you was there. But yeah, it's time for him to go now. His break even's massive. He's lost over 170k for you this season, but he just falls in that bad category that he just needs to go, unfortunately. I did have Chera on here before the news dropped that he has now free to play, which was early this morning. So that is always a big positive for those that are owners. And I will just say, even though it's not huge relevant anymore, but I was probably in the camp of trading him just because I'm in the camp that you don't get attached to these guys, even though he has been performing super well. He is starting now to getting to that point where he's sort of maxed out in his price range. He's got some tougher matchups coming as well, so he potentially is going to drop some lower scores. We haven't seen it yet, but there's every chance that he does start to drop off and does become a bit of a trade out target in the coming weeks, especially leading into the round 12 buys, which I'll be talking about a fair bit in this video around the buys. For number 2, I have gone with the failed mid prices. They did sneak up a spot from last week, and I just think that they are starting to become a bit more of a priority now. I think with the options that we have in terms of mid prices, but our trading options, I think there's a viable option to jump off these failing mid prices, and that's your Sanders, Miles Bergman. I did have Garcia in that category as well because I do consider him a bit of a mid pricer because he was started at an elevated price tag. You could say Jackson Prize also in there. If you have Sam DeConing, he's still no one. I do have Briggs as in that category as well as a failed mid pricer. It hasn't worked out for when you traded him in. I know a lot of people did the cherry to him. He has lost you maybe 150 points in the last 2 weeks. He would have dropped 70 points just on last week alone. So it is a massive problem for your team, and it's starting to become irreversible very, very quickly, because 150 points is nothing to be sneezing at. It is massive amount of points, and it's just going to continue to hurt you. And he hasn't shown you anything. He seems to be injured at the moment. Like, he was starting so well last week. I think he was on nearly 50 points at the half, and then just did 2 points in the second half. So hugely disappointing. He sat on the bench a fair bit of that. So I know he has a pretty good run coming up, particularly this 4-week stretch. Geelong, Fremantle, Carlton, and Richmond. But I just don't think the points and the money he's going to make potentially in that run is going to be outweigh the points that he is losing for you every single week, especially with the other ruckmen at the moment performing as well as they are, putting up 70 points on his head, let alone last week. So it can only get bigger from here. It's only going to cost you about 200k to get up to one of those primo rucks, whether that's a Cherry or a Marshall. If you want to be a little bit different, I could lean either way with that one. If you're trying to make up the points, definitely could go a bit of a unique option there in Marshall. So I'd definitely be jumping off him if you did that. Besides that, I don't really have many other failed mid prices. You could classify that as Saligo in there if you can make the other trade work. But yeah, for me, I can't jump off him yet. Besides that, it is obviously the maxed out rookies to jump off of this week. They've done their job, and that's all these guys that you can see up top here. Murphy Reed's, Levi Ashcroft is definitely another one you could jump off of this week if it gets you up to the player that you're looking for. My only question with trading him out is who's that other rookie that you're looking at fielding, because I think we have a very select few amount of rookies that we're comfortable fielding at the moment. I would say that's obviously bias if you even classify him as a rookie anymore. Lindsay this week, particularly against West Coast Eagles, should be pretty good. Obviously, Levi Ashcroft has been getting a pretty comfortable ride all season so far. So if you're trading him out and you're still running an extra rookie, or you've got 3 rookies, who is that guy that you're going to be fielding? Maybe it's a Cleary. He's starting to get into that category now that I'd probably be comfortable to trade him with 3 of his 4 scores above 60. So he's starting to find his way into that. A lot of people are still running 2 defender rookies. Is that a Reed that you could have back there? He's dropped just a 1 poor score so far this season. A Trainer, who knows what's happening with him, with the likes of Noel Bolter being back this week. They play the second last game of the round, so I'd be very careful with relying on him potentially being on field this week. So for me, I think I'll just be running with Zach Reed on the field straight up on Thursday night. So that's just my thinking with that one. But all these guys can go. It's pretty straightforward. 1 up, 1 down is the ideal situation if you don't have other issues in your team. So it is very team dependent, but getting rookies off the field is the name of the game, as we all know. So I think that sort of does it for the trade out targets. I think I made that quick enough because I think it's pretty straightforward, as we all know. I think everyone knows your own team and what needs to happen. It's just what the rankings are. I guess if I just quickly rank who the trade outs should be, if in terms of just rookies themselves, I think Davidson's definitely number 1. He's got Port Adelaide. He's a very tough matchup. They're in the most money on his head, so he's definitely up there. I probably have Sam Lawler just behind him there. He's got a fair bit of money on his head. Hawthorn as well, very tough. So he can go. Murphy Reed falls just behind them because he doesn't have as much money on his head, but he does have St Kilda, so I do think he could get close enough to that break even and not lose too much cash out of that. So if you got all these options, then he could be one that stays. Besides that, you're getting into these lower priced rookies now that aren't going to get you up much. So if you can get them up, and that's enough for you, but most likely you're trading out these more expensive rookies like your Murphy Reeds that are all 500k plus. That's really going to get what gets you that upgrade that you need on the other side. So, and then I'll probably have Levi Ashcroft at the bottom of all those, just because, yes, like I said, he is one that I'd still be comfortable fielding, especially against Gold Coast this week. Could put up a potential good score. The only concern I have with Levi Ashcroft, and I think it's been spoken about a fair bit in the community, is that he is potentially due for a rest this week. He has been slowing down a little bit in the last sort of, month or so. I don't sort of think it will happen just because I think he just got held pretty accountable last week with Brad Hill staying on him a fair bit on the wing there and not allowing those marks like we normally would see last week. So I think he'll be able to free up a fair bit more this week. But because he plays the last game of the round, it is obviously a huge concern if he is named sub. We don't have any alternatives to really go to. A Cleary plays early on that day, so you can't even know that. But it would be nice if we know that he's going to be the sub prior to the game. Not just the hour prior, but at least a day or two before, so we can make adjustments as needed. So I don't think it'll happen, but there is always that certainty. There's always that chance of happening. So be wary of it and try and make some contingency plans if you can. Otherwise, he is definitely one that could be just jumped off if you are that concerned that he's going to be subbed out. So or be the starting sub. So he falls in that category of being traded out as well. All right, so that is it for the trade out targets. Now we'll move into the trade in targets, and I'll do what I normally do, and I'll go through position by position, and I'll start with the midfielders this week because I think they're probably the least relevant in my opinion. I don't think too many people are looking at massive upgrades in there, so I'll bring up my top 5. I think Ned Long is by far the clearest number 1 trade target for midfielders this week. I just think he adds so much flexibility to your trading options because you can easily downgrade a failing mid-pro asset to him, and then that should give you enough money on the other side to be able to do an upgrade. So that could be a Sanders down to Ned Long, that nets you about 150k, and that 150k could be put on top of a Levi Ashcroft's head, and that gives you about 800 to 900k to be able to get a decent premium there. So I just like what he's being able to doing. Plus, he's generating so much cash, which is a huge priority at the moment. There's been highly spoken about that. We don't have much cash generation going on at the moment because we don't have the rookies coming through as we would normally. So Ned Long presents a very unique situation at the moment where he's actually making a fair bit of money in that midfield at an elevated price tag while also putting up very nice fieldable scores for us in that midfield line. So he is definitely a huge target at that price tag. 10% owned now, so it is starting to become a lot safer now. If it does go down the shitter very quickly, so you can be amongst it. You can have some safety in that a lot of people are on him now, and we'll all be in the same camp. I'd say a lot of the top 10k are jumping on him now. And he looks like he's got pretty good job security. I like what he does when he's in that midfield. He really frees up the likes of, Nick Dacos, and he just provides something different to that midfield. And there's potential that, side bottom and Pendlebury are due for a bit of a rest. So I think his job security is safe as houses. The run looks okay for the next couple of weeks. Next 2, it should be fine. Crows have been a tough matchup in the past. It's obviously he's never going to get competition as well, so I think it's pretty safe to jump on. He's priced at about 66 at the moment, so you'd have to jump on feeling pretty confident that he's going to go at least 76. At least give that 10 points of upside. I think he's pushing closer to 85. His last 3, he is averaging 93. With scores of 104, 81, and 95. In that 95 was in lower game time as well, so there's potential that there's more on the table there. So I do think he can average close to that 90 points. So yeah, definitely well worth jumping on with plenty of value still to go. So yeah, I just think he's by far number 1. Now, the second option I've got on here, or the rest of the list really, are really expensive because I looked at that sort of cheaper category and I wasn't super confident with any of them. There's the likes of Noah Anderson around that $1 million price tag, but I just wasn't super confident that this is the areas we want to be shopping in with some of their runs and what they've been putting up at the moment. So I think this is sort of the week that if you can't get up to these mega premiums, your Dacoses, your Dunkleys, your Brayshaws, that are really quite close to that top of the line, they're all priced about that $1.08 million, priced at about 110. So then I'd potentially be trading in a defender in your midfield line or a forward into your forward line, into your midfield line that are presenting a lot more value than what these midfielders are at the moment. So, but I do have Nick Dacos still at number 2. I still think he presents the most value out of these midfielder options. I know he is priced at 110, but the man's been averaging 120 over the last 5 and 130 pretty much over the last 3. So he presents some value at least. I think he can at least go another 5 points of value in terms of average. So he is definitely a pretty good option with how he's performing. Run coming up. I don't see too much tags coming up. Potentially, obviously, Hawthorn and Melbourne are maybe the only tags coming up. I haven't seen the Cats tag as much recently, so it wouldn't be. I would not be surprised if they do put a fair bit of attention into him. Maybe it's an Atkins, maybe O'Connor comes into the midfield trying to shut him down, but I don't think it will be as bad as what a lot of people think. So I think he'll be fine there. But besides that, the run looks pretty healthy as well. So especially after the bye. So if you're not targeting now, there's a world that I'd be holding off just until after his bye because his run after the bye is pretty massive. So yeah, definitely want to jump on post around 14 as well. But he's there at number 2. Josh Dunkley is another option I really liked. He falls in at number 3 if I can spell. He is the cheapest he has been for a little while at that $1.08 million. He's been averaging 110 so far this season. He's just dropped to 22k so far this season after a blistering start, averaging 120 to start the season, but has dropped a few lower ones recently. But his lowest score has been 97. A decent run still to come up. Suns is pretty good. North, I'll probably just show you here. It's a bit easier to show rather than in that. But Gold Coast Suns, North, Melbourne, Hawthorn, tougher one, Essendon, Adelaide, GWS, another tough one, but Geelong. So the run through to the bye round 16 is also pretty healthy. So if you can jump on him, I think he's a very viable option. Also very B-seeable or straight C, just with the scores that he is putting up at the moment. So I like him. Andrew Brayshaw falls in at number 4. A very similar price tag as Josh Dacos, but I think a lot of people already have him. He's just below Josh Dunkley because I think his run isn't as good. I'll show you that again. He's got Collingwood, GWS, and Port Adelaide back-to-back after this round. So that's 3 very tough matchups sort of leading into his bye. But given he has the round 13 bye, he's obviously a pretty big target. If not now, then definitely after his bye. Because obviously he's on the bye with the 2 players. He's obviously killing it, especially looking at the form he's in. 5 weeks in a row with the ton run. 4 of those over 110, and 2 of those above 120 as well. So he looks great, and up against St Kilda could be a pretty big score again. As long as he doesn't cop attention, right? There's always a chance that he cops the Windhager tag this week because he has been performing so well, but I still think it might go to the likes of Caleb Sarong because I just think he's the more damaging midfielder. So you're really just opening up a hole for one or the other, really. And if you're looking for a cheaper option and you're really sort of stuck with just trading in a midfielder, then I have gone with Lachie Neale as that cheaper price, that sub-$1 million price. I think he's one that you could still run just towards that buy, mid-season buy for the 8 weeks or so. Probably not too many tags coming his way. Maybe a Sparrow in round 10. Hawks probably put kind of Nash on him, but it won't be a huge tag there. Bedford probably locked and loaded. That's the only one you're probably going to be worried about. So of 8 weeks, you may be looking at 2 tags at most. And we know he can have a massive run of form in the mid-season. We've seen it time and time again that he just goes on these runs where he averages 120. So there's every chance that this is the start of that run. So if you're looking for a cheaper option, then Lachie Neale could be your man there. But just looking at some of the other popular options that a lot of people are bringing in, I guess it's probably time that I should talk about the rookie downgrades. I think this is where a lot of people are struggling this week. But no surprises, I have Hugh Boxall at number 1. He's been named to debate debut. as of tonight. So looking at his numbers, which I conveniently have up, he is averaging 109 in the VFL over 4 games so far this year. He's just racking up the pill. Scores of 110, 135, 122, and 69 in his first game. He's just absolutely killing it at the moment. So if he comes in and he's not going to be the sub, which we will know because it's on the Friday night, so he's definitely one that I'd be jumping on as number one. Basement price as well, which is always a luxury. You could wait a week and have a look just to make sure that he's going to play and not be the sub, and his scoring potential is going to transfer from VFL to AFL. But with the other options that we have that I've listed here, I still think it's worth jumping on him 1 week in, and because there's always a chance that there's another player that we want to jump on next week, which means you're probably going to miss one of them, right? The only concern I have with Boxall is that the likes of Matthias Philippou coming back into the side, if not this week, then definitely next week, I would say. The midfield is starting to get in a bit of a shake-up. You've already got McRae in there. You've already got Jack Steele, who pretty much are immovable in there. They've thrown the likes of Windhager through there at times this year. Garcia has been the other man that has been there a fair bit. And they've also thrown in the likes of Nasai Wanganimilira as of last week. So they really are still searching for that third midfielder at the moment. And I do think that is Matthias Philippou long term. So it will be interesting to see where Boxall sort of plays. This week, probably be fine. But where he starts to move into post Matthias Philippou coming into the side, does he play a bit more forward? How will that affect his scoring? Is there potential that he's going to be sub risk? There's a lot of options there, but he's not one that I'd comfortably just avoid because of those worries, because he could very much just absolutely kill it, and then that's a huge cash generation that we will be missing, which is so vital at the moment with these lack of cash generation going on in our team. So he's one that I definitely feel comfortable jumping on this week, and something that I'm looking at doing as well. He is above my man Buslinger. I shouldn't say my man because I don't own him, but why can't I find it? Because I'm in midfielders. He's at number 2 just because he's shown enough in the first quarter last week that he is potentially going to be a very good scorer. We know he's been a very good scorer in the VFL for, the best part of 12 months. So I think he's shaking it off. He was in a tough matchup against GWS, put up the 42, break even on the lower end of 13 now. So he's going to make a bit of money if he jumped on him last week. But against Port Adelaide, probably puts up another relatively low score and not an absolutely urgent one to jump on. So I'm probably leaning towards jumping on Boxall first out of these two. And there's no. It'll be interesting to see whether he holds this spot with the likes of Jones potentially coming back into the side, whether they thought he performed well enough in there with his 42 points, only having the 13 disposals, 4 marks. Yeah, there's the concerns in all these rookies, but I just feel more comfortable with Boxall at the moment. Number 3, I have gone with Caden Cleary. If you didn't have him already, then if you have the spare money, then I don't mind you jumping on him. Like it is a lot of money. I will say that I don't like paying over 400k for a rookie, but considering the lack of cash generation in our sides at the moment, he's definitely one that if you don't have it, it's a huge miss, because he does look like he has a lot of potential to make a lot of money with him. 3 scores over 60 so far, with only that 33 from last week against Port Adelaide. Tougher matchup. Does have a tough matchup against this week against the GWS, but fingers crossed he can still perform well enough to continue his cash generation. So if you have the cash in the hand, then I wouldn't mind you jumping on him just to continue your cash, because I think he can make 150k, get up to that 600k price tag with the scoring potential he has at the moment. Number 4, I've got Carroll. He probably was the option from last week with just the way he's performing. He's gone back to back, sort of just mid-50s in that range. Even against tougher matchups, he's getting it done. So if you don't have him, he's already a bit of the elevated price tag. I wouldn't mind you jumping on him, but he probably only has 100 to 140k left to make if he's going to average this sort of 50 price tag. It only takes one bad score from him to really stop that cash generation, so be wary of that. That's why he's down at number 4, and that's why I feel a bit more comfortable jumping on these cheaper guys, if not going to the top range, who probably has more of a scoring potential. Besides that, it's really just jumping on another basement rookie that has some good scoring potential and good scoring pedigree that we know of. So that is the downgrade targets. Now, did I finish off midfielders trade-ins? I'll quickly just scan down the list here. A lot of them are DPP, so I won't talk about them just yet. But I wouldn't be trading in Lindsay. I'd said when you traded him out that you don't look back because this is a potential. I think it's too late to trade him in because there's every chance that he drops a bad score and then you're trading him instantly out. So it's a waste of a trade in my opinion. I'd definitely rather go to the likes of a Ned Long. That's only 100k more expensive than that. So there's that. George Hewitt, if you're jumping on him, I'm not going to fault you. He's around that 110 price tag, and he's been going at 115, so I'm not going to stop you, but it's definitely not something that I would be doing. But, yeah, he's been absolutely killing it. Zach Butters, again, really expensive, but not as expensive as others, so I don't mind it. He's been performing extremely well since coming back in the side. Does have a tough matchup against Bulldogs, who have been a little bit restrictive so that far this year, so probably only expect a low ton from him, but long term, don't mind him, but just be careful with the round 12 buy. I think a lot of people are a little bit heavy in there, and that's probably where I'll start talking about the buys a little bit, and not a huge amount because again I don't think it's hugely relevant, but we're 4 weeks out from round 12, which will be the start of the buys, so we have 8 trades to really set ourselves up for the buys. So you're going to make them worthwhile. It's worth double checking if you're heavy in certain areas now and just sort of making where you're heavy make the determine who you're trading in this week and for the following weeks as well. So have a look. It's pretty straightforward to bring up make your own buy planner, or there's plenty online that you can use. Just start looking at targets, who you're looking at targeting throughout the buys and where you're sort of heaviest, and just start sort of planning out who's going in each buy round, because we've got a lot of mid prices that we're potentially jumping off. A lot of people have the likes of Short and Roberts. Are you planning on jumping off them when it comes to the round 14 buy? If yes, start making your plans. If you're jumping on Ned Long, he potentially is another one that could jump off at round 14. I think a lot of people are mostly heavy in round 12 at the moment, with the likes of a lot of Port Boys, with Rosie, Horn-Francis, Butters, for example. Then Sheasel, Daniel, Cherry. It's probably already 6 players, so I probably want to say 6 premiums is the maximum I would recommend having on each week. So that's limiting how much damage it's going to do per week. I know a lot of people have this philosophy of not having these early buy players in round 12, because once you pass round 12, you're trading them in following that. But I don't think it's going to be too much of a concern this year, particularly with only 4 teams per round. So yeah, I'm not too worried about that. At the moment, I currently have 5 premiums in the round 12 specifically, which is my most heaviest line. So yeah, take that as you will. Besides that, obviously round 13 has the 2 teams, so that's pretty valuable for a lot of teams. So that's your St Kildas, your Nasai Wagon Millers, your Marshalls, your Sinclairs, your McRae's and whatnot, and then you also got Freo there, which is probably just Brayshaw mostly. So take that as you will. But yeah, let's continue on, because I've already gone for half an hour already and I haven't got to any other players. So we'll move on to Rucks, because again, probably very unlikely many people are touching this area unless you got the likes of Briggs. Pretty much it is. I've moved up Cherry to the number 1 trading target. This week, he is just back in form now. It was pretty surprising to see him get that 122 against Jordan Sweet, who had shown he has been a pretty tough matchup, but comes up against the old Goldstein this week, so is a very viable VC option at the moment, and it seemingly has bottomed out in price now, so you can jump on him at 200k cheaper than what he started at, where most of us started him. So definitely don't mind jumping on him there. And he should go at 115 average for the rest of the year to bump up that average a fair bit. So definitely worth jumping on him at this low price tag. It doesn't cost you much if you're moving off of a TDK or a Briggs. If you've got a TDK still, it's tough because he does come up against a tough matchup, but he did show last week that he was much better. It really just depends on how you feel about him long term. Do you think there's still a concern with Pitnet coming into the side? Long term, do you think he's going to average, at least 10 points within the frame of these guys, these top line guys, Cherry, Gawn, Marshall? Then there's every chance that, jumping off him. Because, jumping off a TDK to go into Cherry doesn't really cost you much at the moment. I think it's pretty much sideways trading. And then you'd be able to jump off a rookie if you have a bit of the money in the bank to go up elsewhere, or get him up to at least a mid-pricer like a Ned Long, which is what I did last week. So definitely think that's still a viable option. Max Gawn is at number 2. But there's a reason why he's at number 2, just because he's getting a bit pricey now, nearly at $1.07 million, so priced at about that 607 sort of range. So yeah, he's getting a bit more expensive now to jump on, and it's a bit more of a stretch for money making. So really going with the value options there, but also a very good C option this week up against the West Coast Eagles. Royal Marshall slots in at number 3. He showed a little bit last week with his 107 up against McInerney, so that was a very viable ruck matchup. Pretty tough there, so it was good to see him put up some decent scores after a few bad weeks. So here's another very cheap option that you could jump on if you want to be a little bit more unique in the top sort of 10k. Realistically, he's only 15% owned at the moment, and I think a lot of that was ghost teams starting with him so early on, so don't mind him there. But ultimately, I don't think many of us are playing in this sort of field at the moment. We'll move on to the forwards, just because, yeah, why not? So my forward options this week, I still have Petrarca at number 1. Obviously performed really well last week with that 114 up against West Coast Eagles. He should have another day out and get a fair few goals there. So yeah, it should go really nicely. Hopefully puts up another 110 for owners. Still at a low price. It's getting a bit pricey now. I think it's priced at about 90. Just a little bit over 90 from memory. Have a quick look. Yeah, probably about 92, 93 now. So if you think he goes at 100, he definitely presents a little bit of value. If you think he's closer to 95, then maybe he only has 1 or 2 points left to go. So, but again, should be good for the long run. He should be there or thereabouts in the top 6. Number 2, I've got Chad Warner. He's shown a little bit last week with his 119. Did rely on 2 goals in that, but does come up against the Giants this week, so the potential that he gets tagged. He does have a much cheaper price tag of 855k. We know he can be a very, very good player when he's at the top of his game, and he has had that shift back now into that midfield, playing full-time midfield, so that's a positive to see, but it didn't really work last week with his 71, so I'm not super convinced just yet. I think I'll wait one more week. If he can put it up again this week, then he goes into a pretty decent run of games leading into his round 14 bye that I can jump on him. Yes, he may be 20 or 30k more expensive, but he's still at that price range where it is still an underpriced premium in that category. So I still probably going to see him being a 90 average though. We saw a lot of his scores last year was when he was kicking a lot of goals, and he has continued doing that so far this year. Averaging probably over 1 goal each game, kicking 2 most games. So, but I'm not super confident that he's going to be part of that top 6 bracket for forwards for the year. So, I'm not super confident on it. But if he's the best you can get up to, then I think it's a viable option to run him through until luxury season. He'll be around that mark for an extended period of time. Nick Martin is still another option, but again, still very expensive. As I said, he did have a bit of a blemish last week with a bit of a knock, I believe, but he spent a bit more time on the bench, that 85%. So that's a pretty clear sign that he had something wrong with him in that game. Collingwood are super restrictive, as we know, so no surprise to see him drop a bit of a lower score in that one. But again, I still think he'll be part of that top 6 long term. So if you have the coin, definitely worthwhile jumping on him. And I think he'll repay that lower score last week against a decent one against North Melbourne. And finally, I put Matthias Philippou in here as a potential trading option. I think it's just an interesting discussion with... I think he's pretty much confirmed that he's going to be playing AFL this weekend. Obviously, he was a massive target for us in the preseason before his injury, so he presents a huge amount of value. I'm just quickly looking at what he's priced at. I think it's roughly 66. So preseason, we were pretty confident that he was going to be a sort of 90 guy if he gets this full-time midfield role, because from what we saw last year, he played 4 games and he averaged pretty close to that 100 when he played full-time midfield. Now, if you're in a position where you can play a bit more risky because maybe you're a bit further back in the rankings and you just want to jump on the guy that a lot of people are jumping on potentially next week, there's a chance that I'd be comfortable going this week. It's definitely something that I've looked at, but I haven't been able to make it work with, still doing the other move that I want to do this week at the same time. Because he's at a nice price range where you can downgrade a Sanders and get 100k from him, and then potentially still get another upgrade on the other side of things. But I can do it with my teams. But he is definitely someone that a lot of people are targeting next week. So if you're not grabbing him this week, definitely make your plans next week to jump on him if he plays, obviously. The safe play is obviously just wait and see what his role is going to be like. See, there's a chance that he is subbed out early with a bit of management. He's obviously returning from a long-term foot injury. I think it was I don't even want to speculate. I can't actually remember what his injury was, but I thought it was a stress fracture in his foot. So there's always a potential of that coming back, with a bit more load on him. Obviously, the sub concerns. Managed minutes is definitely a possibility as well. So the safe play is just watching and seeing for 1 week and then jumping on next week at that lower price range. But if you're in a lower spot and you just want to take the risk and jump on the guy that a lot of people jump on next week, then I wouldn't say no to jumping on him early, obviously with the risks, right? So that is the forwards. I should probably mention Kitty Coleman in the same breath, because there's a potential that he plays this week. I don't think we have confirmation of that just yet, but he is even cheaper than the likes of Matthias Philippou, so that means there's less risk at that. But I think he's more than likely going to come through the VFL this week. So yeah, just wanted to mention that one there to keep an eye on him, because he's another one that could potentially come into our trade plans as early as next week as well. So be ready for that. But we will move on to the defenders. And number 1 has to be my boy Nasiah Wanganeen-Malira. He is just in his career best year at the moment. I like what he's been doing now with a bit of midfield mix, just sort of floating everywhere, that he can just play wherever he wants. Obviously, got a bit of a contract year, so they are just doing everything they can to please him, to try and get him to stay. Just quietly, I don't think he's staying. I think he's pretty much gone. So it'll be interesting to see whether he lands at Port or Crows next year to be a potential premium for us later down the line. But anyways, he is just absolutely killing it at the moment. I love to see that he is increasing his ceiling in this new role. So that is always a positive. It potentially starts becoming a bit more of a BCC option long term. Obviously, the cheapest of these more expensive premiums at the top end. So yeah, he is definitely a viable option. Up against Fremantle this week. A very good matchup for these midfielders and these designated kick-out players. So he is definitely a worthwhile option. I don't like to see that his time on ground has started to decrease, though. Just obviously with a bit more of a management with him in the midfield, a bit more impactful, a bit more intensity in there. So no surprise to see that that's dropping off, but I would like to see that return to his mid-80s sort of time on ground. But we'll wait and see what happens there. But he's an obvious number 1. Obviously, the buy is also a huge value point as well. Round 13, like I said, that is a huge value point. being on the two team bye. Number 2, I have Jack Sinclair. And I'm tossing up between these two pretty heavily, between a Jack Sinclair and a Harry Sheezel, because this is exactly where I'm shopping this week. Harry Sheezel scares the living daylights out of me if he does return to this halfback role, which we saw a little bit last week, right? He did not play a single CBA last week, played full halfback, only managed a 95 because he was playing a pretty accountable role against the likes of Sam Powell-Pepper. And ultimately, North Melbourne haven't been chipping it around as they have previously in previous years. We've seen that with Caleb Daniels' sort of role. He's filled that role, but he's not getting nearly as many marks as the likes of Harry Sheezel has in the past. Obviously, Harry Sheezel is a far better player and a far better footy player, without to mention fantasy. So no surprises that he demands the ball a lot more, with just being a bit more of a lethal kick. But he does scare the shit out of me. That if he goes to his halfback role, he potentially presents 15 points of value, even though he's priced at that 105 at the moment. Because we've seen him cruise at 120, 125 in that halfback role. So if there's any whispers that he's going to be staying in this halfback role for an extended period of time, then it's definitely something that I want to be a part of, because his price, his ownership is super scary with 56% of the time on the ground. So that's my consideration. Do I jump on the ownership and the potential higher ceiling in the more value with Harry Sheezel if he's going to stay in this role? But there's always that potential that, okay, this halfback role isn't working out for him. He may be thrown back into the midfield, or even worse, be thrown forward, where we've seen him not score as well. But saying that, his lowest score has been 90 for the year, so it's been very, very solid. His time on ground has been pretty impressive too, with pretty much 90s is pretty consistent. Decent matchup this week against Essendon, but the run isn't as good, so that's where I'm flipping and flopping with Jack Steele. Jack Steele definitely has the better run of the two, particularly back there. So looking at their run, sorry, did I say Jack Steele? I meant Jack Sinclair. Fremantle, Carlton, West Coast, Gold Coast, and the Melbourne. So probably 4 out of 5 very good matchups leading into his round 13 bye. The other thing with whereas Harry Sheezel goes Essendon, Brisbane, Richmond, Collingwood, and then the round 12 bye. So that's probably where I'm weighing up. Like, do I want to buy into another round 12 bye player? I currently don't have a round 12 bye player in my defensive line, so I don't think it's a huge concern either way, whereas I already have Nasai Wang and Emilera. So I'm starting to lean towards Harry Sheezel just because he scares me a little bit more than what I think a Sinclair might do, even though he does have the better run. But it may be dependent on where your buy structure looks up in that field. So please look at that before making your decision. But I do think Nasai is probably by far probably not by far, but probably the better option of the two, with just the way he's performing at the moment. So take that as you will, but yeah, I really like both of those options. I've been pretty hot on Jack Sinclair for the best part of a couple of weeks with his run, but with the shake-up with Harry Sheezel in that back line is definitely something that we've got to consider. Like I said, he can definitely cruise at 125 if he continues in this role. So yeah, I would like to have confirmation. He does play Thursday night, and he is named currently. I do need to look at teams where he is named. I might do that on the fly here at the moment. So he is named on the half forward flank, which he was named there last week. So probably not reading into that too much realistically. They haven't brought in anyone else. They brought in Bailey Scott, so that's probably another defender they bring in. Will Humphreys, sorry, Will Phillips, sorry, goes into the midfield replacing George Wardlaw, and yeah, that's probably about all is there to be concerned about. So yeah, but we'll continue on. Number 4, I've got Dane Zorko at there. Number 4, like I said, returned to form last week with his big 124 in a very juicy matchup against St Kilda, as sort of expected realistically. Now he's down at number 4 because I just think the other guys present a little bit more value and I have a bit more certainty that they're going to continue at this range. You know, we've still got the Fletcher back there long term with Dane Zorko. You know, Kitty Coleman's not far away as well. So I just have some more question marks with Dane Zorko in his longevity at that price range. He's still quite expensive, but obviously has dropped pretty significantly from his start price. So there's no doubt that he potentially presents value, but yeah, just too many question marks for me at this stage. But if you have the few of the others and you're not confident with them, I definitely would recommend the likes of Dane Zorko. But if you can't pay up for those guys that are over $1 million, I think the guy that you want to pay up for could be John Noble. I really like his run to the mid-season bye. I can show you that here. So Brisbane, Western Bulldogs, Hawks, St Kilda, Freo, and Geelong going into that round 14 bye. So one tougher game in the next 6 weeks. He's shown that he is just demanding the ball straight from the kick-in there. So he's just putting up some very nice scores. Quietly averaging 104 over the last 5. So still got plenty of value to make because he's priced about that 90, 91 at the moment. So I'd be pretty comfortable trading him in for at least to the mid-season buyers, and then you can jump off him if it doesn't work out from there. If you're looking for a cheaper guy from there, then you could potentially go Rivers. I'm not super confident with it, but good matchup again. You know, back-to-back 110s. Obviously, good matchups in saying that, but he does go into a tougher fixture post that, so be wary. But yeah, at 100k, he could definitely continue at this range. But you know, 10 marks and 12 marks, I don't see that being sustainable. There, his role hasn't really changed. He's still on the halfback, just getting plenty of points off there. So I don't mind that one. I do think you've missed the boat on Ash now. I don't think he's injured. There's not on the injury list, so yeah, I'm not sure what's happening there, but it's enough to probably be a bit concerned with the ice on his calf that I wouldn't be trading into him now, even though he does present some sort of value if he continues at this 104 average. Bowie was another one, but I do think he sort of missed the boat now. He's getting very expensive, getting closer to that 90 average at the moment. That's 90 price tag, sorry. So really, realistically, what do you think he can average from here? Maybe 95, so maybe he presents 5 points of value. Whereas I think you're paying up that little bit extra to go to a Noble, who I think he can go push at that a little bit further on, getting closer to 100 in my opinion. Just going down the list here, really no one else to talk about, I don't think. People jumping off Matt Roberts, don't hate it, but I don't think it's the week to do that with how he's been performing in the last couple of weeks. I wouldn't be doing that. I think that'll sort of do it. Josh Dacos was another one I should have mentioned. Sorry, I scrolled straight past him. Obviously put up that 119 last week in a very good matchup. He absolutely killed it with 36 disposals, 9 marks. Didn't get any tackles, but yeah, he's obviously doing very well. My concern is that he's not taking kick-ins, so his floor is significantly less than what I would be comfortable with if he took more kick-ins. He only took the 1 last week, and I think he's only taken 2 max all season. So I'm not super confident with it, and that's where I think the likes of a John Noble, who's only maybe 5 or 6k cheaper, has the potential to be a little bit more value than this guy, just because I think they rely on Noble a little bit more to be that distributor off halfback, where Josh Dacos has the likes of Houston alongside him, and Maynard's also there, Quainer. There's just a host of different players in the Collingwood side that can distribute the ball off halfback. They're absolutely stacked. So I just don't know if I see Josh Dacos getting to that 100 average at the moment. This is his first time he's put up 100 plus. Before that, they've all been that sort of 80 to 90 scores. So that's where I see him. I probably see him being that 95 sort of guy, not anything more. So it does present some value, but not a huge amount of value. So I'm not super keen on him. But I think that sort of does it for all the positional trades there. Just quickly going back to the top in case I missed anyone. Don't think I did, but yeah, fingers crossed you've got all your trades sorted for this week. I think teams will throw up a few haymakers tomorrow night. But what am I looking at doing? I things haven't really changed too much. I still think I'm going the likes of Murphy, Reed, down to either Bustlinger or the Boxman. I think I've got the Boxman just in front of him at the moment, just to just also frees up a bit more coin. And then that means I'm getting Bergman, my boy, up to the likes of Sheasel. I think I've made my decision that I'm going to go with Sheasel. It does lock out my trades pretty early with Sheasel, obviously on the Thursday night, which is a little bit of a concern. But I think he will be good long term. So that's what my trades are sort of looking like at the moment. And this will be how we're sort of structuring up for the round to come. Obviously fielding the likes of Ashcroft, Lindsay, Reed, and Bice. Those are probably the four that I'm comfortable trading. I don't like Trainer just with the late game on the Sunday. He could potentially be sub again with Bolter back in the side, so be concerned with that one if you're trusting him to be on field. I do have some concerns with Ashcroft, obviously, with the potential of him being subbed. So make it contingency plans. I would love to see if I could field Cleary above him, but I unfortunately don't have a looping option with Ted Closey playing before him. Sorry, my cat is just going off at the moment. He's trapped in the room. So I'll wrap this up very quickly. But yeah, my VCs and Cs are probably very set. But stay tuned for captains tomorrow when my captains video comes out. Then, if you're stuck with captain options this week, I'll be coming out with all the information possible. But hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, subscribe, do all those good things. I do appreciate everything that you guys do. Besides that, all the best for the week ahead. Catch you later.